Hello, hello. 1 second. Intro. Hello, Keren.
Hi, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. I'm so happy to have you, and I'm so happy to have you all fresh and feeling good. As everyone knows, we scheduled this live for yesterday. So we're sorry if you did come yesterday for the live, but as we know, this is a podcast. So this is recorded and everyone can have access to it. So we're very happy that you're feeling good and we're ready to start sharing a little bit more about you. Are you ready, Keren?
Absolutely, Natalie. Thank you. Appreciate the flexibility.
Amazing. So let me share with our audience who you are, and then we're going to dive right in the questions that we have for you. So Keren is currently the CEO and board member of OCON Healthcare, which is a leading women's health company with a mission to introduce innovative, high-quality intrauterine drug delivery technology to improve and impact women's health and quality of life. Prior to OCON, Keren was the head of corporate development at the European pharma company Visu Pharma. She was a board member of BioLite, which was traded at the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange. And she was the CEO of Visi and was also a board member of BioLite, a university lecturer in marketing and business English. In her previous positions, she successfully led clinical research and development and business development projects. And she currently sits on Femtech Labs admission and advisory board, as well as LSX Advisory Board, and she's a mentor at the 8400 Health Tech Network. Keren believes in strengthening women, and she makes sure to lead with passion, integrity, and focus her brilliant team of mostly women, service providers, and customers. She makes sure to volunteer her time with women who are starting out their career path and who need mentoring. Keren loves what she does and does what she loves. And we love that.
Yes, and you should also add I'm the main slave at home. Forgot to add that.
I forgot to add that, right? Main slave at home. That's a good
Main
one.
slave.
I love it. Keren, I'm so excited. I've been waiting. We've talked a few weeks ago about this podcast, and since then I've been doing some research and reading about you and listening to the previous interviews that you've given. I was like, wow, this is amazing. I'm so excited that we're having her on our podcast. So the first question I want to ask you, and I think this is a question that people asked you in the past, but I believe it's important for our listener to hear that, is you're a woman CEO of a women-led, mostly led company that is creating products for women, right? That is basically the definition of what you're doing. And we would think that those products for women, for health, women for their health and their lifestyle would get as much attention as any other product, right? Talking about, how we live our lives as women. And when I heard the different interviews and when I read about you, it seemed like it was 30 to 40 years that no one had really invested in innovation for women's health. And that I was really shocked about that. Can you tell us more about that and tell us what is your, how do you explain that?
Well, first of all, I don't think it's 30, 40 years that nothing has been invested in women's health. I think there hasn't been a lot of innovation that look at women as separate from men. I think that for forever, we were considered little men. Right. And so most of the clinical studies that we see on most of the medications that we know didn't take into account specific needs of women that have different metabolism. We have different organs, right? And I'm not talking about the brain. We have a uterus. But on a more serious note, there hasn't been a lot of focus on women specifically for specific therapies. And one thing I always, comment is that, when we look at heart attacks, women, when they undergo a heart attack, it's completely different from men. You know how we always talk about the left arm and how we have a blurred speech. Women have a complete different manifestation of a heart attack. They sweat severely, we're very, very, very nauseous, completely different. And just with that in mind, we have to look at women's health as a different entity from the general health. And looking at, the population of the world, we're over 50%. I think this is a great opportunity to take a look at some of our needs. And OCON really innovates in diseases that are around and in and through the uterus itself. Our mission really is to introduce devices into our bodies that fit our anatomy first and foremost. And the second thing is to really move away from all these harmful side effects from all the oral formulations we need to take in order to treat diseases of the uterine cavity, right? Why do we have to have our entire bodies and blood circulation and stomach and everything participate in some of these therapies that we need to take when we can just put it directly at the target tissue? So that's what we're doing. But we do believe in gender diversity. We do have a few men that work with us. But really, you see that when women lead, they lead with passion. And when they lead with passion for women's health products, it's really wonderful to see. When you sit across the table at our offices, and all of us are really focused and dedicated, because we know that even if we don't specifically suffer from certain diseases, or we choose to use alternative methods of contraception, we still can believe and understand and relate to women that want to use products that are safer, that fit our anatomy better, that add to our quality of life. So that's where we come from.
I love it. I love that. And you're actually transitioning amazingly with my second question, which is women leadership. You're a woman leader, you're leading other women, mostly you believe in diversity, so you also have men, and of course we don't want to do the the other way around and exclude men altogether. That's not the point. But I want to ask you, what is, and this is a question I ask to a lot of my guests because I'd love to have the different opinions around that. What is, according to you, the specificity of women leadership, like how women lead? Not necessarily better, but differently than men. Like, what is your observation, maybe in yourself and in the people that you lead, of how this is different?
Well, I can only tell you from my experiences, because I've had women that managed me, and I had men that managed me, and today that I manage, my colleagues, and of course there's a board. I can tell you, at 30,000 feet, I think women give a lot more room for opinions, for actions, and a lot more empathetic. We're all mothers, and we all know what that means. And we all know that if we need to go home earlier and continue our day later, that's also fine. I think that we're in the detail, but then again, we provide a lot more room for other people to really speak. We don't always take the credit for everything. We let the team, kind of be very independent, and I think that's super important for women leadership. And I'm an advocate of good leaders, not necessarily women leaders. And I think that a good leader is a leader that sits back and lets his team, really bring forward their thoughts, their ideas, their passions, despite if it's a man or a woman. I've had one female boss that was absolutely fantastic. I learned so much from her because she gave me freedom to operate. And I don't think it was because maybe she was a woman, because I've had men leaders who also gave me freedom to operate. So I think it's important as a leader, but not necessarily as a woman.
Right. But we hear very often that the leadership, like the feminine leadership, is different than the masculine leadership. Do you think that it's because the feminine leadership has evolved that now we can have a company like OCON who is actually focusing on innovation for women's health? Do you think that it's because people are more accepting of that? Like, how do you explain that now we're focusing on innovation, or focusing on making room for innovation on women's health, and before not? What is
well, just to add a little bit to what I said before, I think women are better at asking for help.
Okay.
I think that the ego part is not a main kind of part of our day-to-day activities or kind of operation. And so I think in that sense, it's easier for us to get, help that we need, because nobody knows everything, right? We all need help and assistance and escorting. But I do think that, we're women-led women's health company, which is kind of a double woman. But I think that, and I see a lot of other women entrepreneurs that lead with passion, not necessarily in women's health. It's fantastic to see. It's really fantastic to see.
How has it been for you in your journey to become a CEO? Like, what were the milestones? And we speak a lot. The group that we're in is the Born to Do business community. I believe a lot in that we're born to do something amazing, that we have an impact on people, and that if you a soul contract, if you speak in spiritual terms, and that wherever we are in our journey, this is where we're supposed to be, and we have this progression towards our purpose. And so where are you on this timeline? Like, was this something that you knew all along, that you were going to be a CEO? Is that something that you were surprised
No,
by?
actually, I really kind of relate to what you're saying. I think I'm really right now at the right place at the right time. I think that 5 years ago, I wouldn't be able to do exactly what I'm doing today, because I needed to go through a lot of different stations in my life, some of them in smaller startups, some of them in bigger pharma, some of them with diagnostics, with devices, with sales and marketing, and some with research and development, some with clinical, medical. So I really think that all the stations in my life led me to the point where I can at least understand all of the different components of leading a company that is not a very small entity, right? Although we are a startup and we restarted up about 1.5 years ago, it's not a small company. We have manufacturing and clinical departments and all our medical folks, and we have a full R&D with our labs, and it's really a functioning company with a pipeline. And so I think that all the stations led me here. I love what I'm doing. I didn't think I'd enjoy it this much. Has a lot of challenges, let me tell you. But I think that at the end of the day, I think everyone is in a place where they need to be, because if not, then they move, right?
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But we're talking about the alignment with a purpose, and from what we see, it seems like you're really aligned with your purpose. And again, was that something that you were like, you had an ambition and you were like targeted this goal, and you're like, yeah, one day I will be CEO of a startup? Or is that something that came organically, that and now you're so happy that it happened? I think the reason why I'm asking this is because a lot of people are wondering, do I have to set goals for myself, even if they're not realistic, and then really drive towards those goals? Or do I let opportunity and organic events lead me to where I am?
Well, I'm from the department of I still don't know what I want to do when I grow up. That's kind of my department, but I'll let you know what happens.
Yeah.
So yeah, there is no goals. I need to be a CEO, or I need to do this, or I need to do that. One thing does always kind of is in my focus, is I love this country, and I think we have awesome Jewish mind. And I can tell you that for about 2.5 to 3 years, I worked outside of Israel in a different company that didn't have, our passion and our innovation and our progression, and it wasn't fun. And it wasn't for me, and it was boring. It was very good in terms of financial gains, but it was really boring. And I promised myself, I want to come back home and I want to do something Kachol Lavan, Israeli, blue and white, something that, will advance our country and community and our minds forward. And it wasn't necessarily specific to women's health. I ended up at OCON. I was recruited really to help with business development and with sales. And I fell in love with the product. I'm using it myself. But and I think it's fantastic, right? So I'm the last person you need to ask, if it's great, because I love it. But the focus really is to get innovation out the door, do business development, get other countries and money into the country to help develop a lot of our innovations here. It happens now to be with OCON, but before that I was in ophthalmology, and before that in other disease areas. And so my focus really is to do good and to bring innovation from Israel everywhere. And that's also part of where I really bring a lot of my energy into 8400, the health network. I really believe that that's such a great accumulation of minds and amazing entrepreneurs and business people and doctors and the
you,
creme de la creme of the country.
Can you tell us a little bit more about that? Because I know I've said it in your bio, but I'm not sure everyone knows what it is. So I would love to hear more about what it is.
Yeah, so the 8400 Health Network put a statement of helping innovation, this whole ecosystem to flourish. And they're taking a lot of more senior and managers that have experience and helping other younger, less experienced folks kind of really get traction with their startups. That's where I'm at with the mentor-mentee program. Right. But people that are in the cohorts get a lot of added value because they get a lot of entrepreneurship and innovation studies and really to help promote this ecosystem called healthcare. I think it's fantastic. 8400 are also involved in many other things in the community. They help doctors also assimilate into commercial organizations, but specifically what I do is the mentorship program. And now, for example, I have a mentee. She's amazing. She's a PhD and she's, leading a women's health company. So important to deal with cancer diagnostics. I learn from it all the time myself. And so I feel like it's a real privilege.
Amazing. And I have to say, I heard you speak on other platforms about, and with very like a lot of authenticity and very open about, you were mentioning it before about the restart up of OCON, right? That the failures that OCON went through and the challenges and how you came and you spoke about it in such an open and such a natural way and saying, we're all, in challenges and we're working on it. And I felt it was really refreshing to hear because some people, would say, everything is great. We're amazing. We're number one. And you hear it, but you know that there are challenges behind it. And so do you want to tell us a little bit about your approach to challenges or failure? Like how do you look at them? Because I know a lot of entrepreneurs, not that we're ashamed of it, but we're like, I don't want to say that it's difficult. I want to say that I'm successful. So what is your recipe to talk about this so naturally?
So the first thing I always say is when you are faced with a challenge, denial and carbs. Those are the two most important things. First of all, get some carbs in you and just, this is not happening to me. This can't be happening to me. This is the first, step in a very, healthy mind.
Yeah, healthy mind. Yeah. Okay. We're with you on that one.
Exactly. When you're healthy, first of all, you're in denial, then you eat something, and then you can, really face the challenge. Okay. But I think that what really helped me with all the challenges, and OCON has had and is having so many challenges, is my team. If you surround yourself with people that are on the same page and have the same energy and that are focused just as you, and no one really has a job, right? It's everyone's job to do everything. You come to work every day, no matter what happens, with so much energy. And I can tell you, some of my team is abroad and some of my team is here in Israel. Some of my team is people that are not FTEs, not full-time employees. They're on contracts, but we all feel like it's ours, right? And I think that's the biggest advantage that any leader or CEO can do for themselves is put people around you that are on the same wavelength and page that you are. And that really helps with every challenge, because every challenge that comes your way, you're not alone and you're not dealing with it alone. It's not yours, it's ours. And just that fact that it spreads to team members, and it doesn't matter, the team could be 3 people and the team could be 30 people, really helps with kind of digesting it. And then everyone, puts on an engine and starts working on, how to solve the problem. We think about it. We talk about what we think would, solve it. I really think number one is team. Yeah. I admire my team. I really do. They work so hard and they're so smart and they're so professional at what they do. And what's really great, I also told them the other day, is that everyone does everything. So it's not one person does one thing and that's it. And because everyone does everything, it allows us all to learn, and help us really, get more professional for our next jobs. Because I told them that there's no job security at OCON. At some point, we will get acquired. And so, they need to prepare for the next day.
Yeah.
And so, it's really the team. I can't stress that enough. That
Wow.
you're never, ever alone.
Never alone. I'm still picturing, when you're saying this, I'm saying to myself, yeah, okay, so the team is in your bubble, right, and of your company, and this is what's happening inside. But when you go outside, why do you have to talk about the challenges? I mean, you know what I mean? Like now we're having a peak, but the question that people ask is, do I say that I'm having challenges, and why should I say to the outside world, or should I
absolutely
solve this with my team, but then have another narrative when I'm outside? Like, what is your take on that?
No, I really believe in teaching and giving it forward. And I think that if people don't realize that you are dealing with challenges and issues and problems and defeats and successes, how can you be a whole person? Nobody only has wins, like nobody only has losses. And I think that the more, I come out and say, this was a problem and this was an issue and this was a challenge, people can say, oh gosh, I'm dealing with the exact same thing. My mentee and I were speaking the other day, and she said, one of my team members is leaving. I said, one of my team members is leaving. And she said, yeah, but my team member, blah, blah, blah. And I said, yeah, but my team member. So it doesn't matter, big or small, experience or not, we all manage the same challenges all the time. And if one person can learn from my experience, and at least that one person can maybe have a better a way of handling it, or at least be able to call me and ask, how do you recommend me handling this, or even handling it on their own and saying, other people go through the same kind of pathway. I did my job. I really think that because, people like me with a lot of experience have gone through so many challenges, we have to put them out there and help other entrepreneurs and innovation specialists, deal with them. And so if that helps anybody, and if people, say, I've done that 100 times, I've been through that, great. Those are the people that don't require that type of, information and help, but a lot of people do.
Right.
And we know OCON, on the outside looks great, because it really is. It's such a great company. It's so much fun to work here. We have great products. We're doing well. We're going to improve women's quality of life. What can go wrong, right? I always say that we don't deal with death, God forbid, and we don't deal with cancers, and we don't deal with really, horrific diseases. We deal really with quality of life. And so on the outside, it looks, a lot of fun and very flashy, but we also have a lot of challenges. We have competitors, we have challenges, we have very expensive hobbies we need to fund. And so, so definitely challenges are all around us.
Of course. And I lead programs for entrepreneurs, for women especially. And when they start sharing really authentically and being themselves, it just brings another energy. And everyone is here to help, just like you said, each other, and not just have this face of, everything is working well, everything is amazing. I want to go back to, you said that you had an experience overseas, and that you wanted to come back to Blue and White, to Israel. And I want to pick your brain around this a little, because it's always interesting to understand, like, what was your perspective? Like, how did you see innovation? Like, what is the Israeli innovation compared to innovation overseas? Like, what was your take on what was the difference? How was it better? Like you said, there's nothing like here in Israel. Like, what was different overseas?
Well, a lot of people will tell you, people that worked abroad, that in companies that are larger in the United States and in Europe, it's all very structured, right? So even if you have your research and development, it's all very, very structured, very slow. Each one has its own job. You never do 10 things. And I find that extremely boring. I need to be in 10 different, plates at the same time, because that's how you learn. And that's also what makes you tick. And when you look at Israel, we all do 100 things, right? Regardless of what your job in the company is. And so, I love that energy, and that there's a sense of urgency. I love that we have a sense of urgency. Everything's urgent. You have to do it today, not tomorrow. Everything is urgent, which makes us, one of the biggest per capita IP manufacturers in the world, and it's for a reason. And so I love that. And I also love the fact, and the folks here at the office know that I said that I want on every single box that leaves this, manufacturing facility, a sticker, a blue sticker that says made in Israel, because this is where it's made. And we should be so proud of it, because really it's such innovation. And we really should be proud of it. And so I really was very, very bored. I did a job that was very, very specific. I wasn't allowed to really go and explore and do other things, not because I wasn't good, just because it wasn't something that was in the culture of companies that are not Israeli. And here, I can, mop the floor and be the CEO, and it's all the same, right? Nobody's going to say, no, that you shouldn't do. It's all, everybody does everything. So I think that I feel more comfortable in that spot than any other spot.
And you think that this is where the Israeli innovation comes from. You think that this is a source.
Sure, and that we all know it all, right? And everybody will tell everybody how wrong they are, which is great because it keeps us on our feet, keeps us thinking all the time, really develops our products better. So yeah, no place like home.
Well, we're happy that you're back. I didn't even know that you had this time abroad, but we're happy that you're back and that we're keeping you here. One last question for our audience, and I know that we have a lot of women entrepreneurs. Well, the podcast is Jewish Women Entrepreneurs, so obviously, and we are usually not. I mean, the audience is less of a startup, more small business entrepreneurs, but being a CEO is across the board, right? You can be a CEO of a startup, you can be a CEO of a small service business, of a small product business, small medium, and I often talk about the CEO mindset, right? It's one thing to have your business, it's one thing to have clients, to do marketing, to do strategy, but at some point you need to leverage to the CEO mindset. So can you give it one or even more than one tip or advice to people that not necessarily are, CEOs of startups or of big companies, but have to have the CEO mindset? They have to go from I'm an entrepreneur to now I'm a CEO. Like, how did you switch? Because you also at some point had to switch. And what would be the advice that you would give for entrepreneurs to switch to that mindset?
First of all, for all of us women that have kids, the kids are going to go to a psychologist anyway, so might as well fuel it, right?
Okay.
I mean, we'll never be the perfect mother. We'll be good enough, and so that's really one thing that I can always say. Kids need to be, also managed by example. And by giving them example of being strong and able and capable and, flourishing and happy, right? When at least when I work, I'm happy. I think it's super important. But on a more serious note, I think that we should really look at our companies as companies and not as projects. I'm just now doing this exercise with a woman that I'm mentoring, how to not look at us as a project or as a small, a work that we're doing, but as a company and as a service of some sort or some sort of platform. And that would immediately kind of allow you to think a little bigger, right? How you're not giving a specific service.
Maybe like give a little bit more, like what does it mean to look at this as a company? Can you explain more? Like what does it mean?
I can tell you an example about OCON. When I came to OCON, we had one product that we sold and talked about, which was the ballerine. This is our contraceptive device. But when you look at the patents, for example, you see that OCON owns the 3D space in the uterus. So obviously, you don't want to look at a product or two products. You want to look at a platform, and then you look at a pipeline, and then you take a look at, all right, what makes sense to put on this little, structure what disease areas are there? And now you're talking about a company that caters to hundreds of millions of dollars of markets versus just, contraception or maybe abnormal uterine bleeding. Now you're looking at disease areas like fibroids and like endometriosis and like menopause and, certain cancers. And so now you're building, a corporation versus, we're a company that has a product that deals with contraception that's better for you.
Wow.
It's not so interesting.
It's the transversal aspect of everything you do, like not looking only, okay, I need to sell this service and find a market or investors for this service, but looking more at the transversal aspect. I love that. That's amazing.
Yeah, you almost have to, because you have to create some sort of edge where you bring something else, and you have to bring continuation. If you're just a one-off service or product or app, it's interesting. It could be very revolutionary, but it's not as interesting as when you bring something, a lot bigger. So stop looking at yourself as a product or a project and look at something a little bit bigger.
I love that. That's amazing. I love that.
No fear.
Great.
No fear. What can happen? We'll fail. It's always an option, right? It's always an option
to speak about it.
Exactly. What can happen?
Exactly. I mean, if we don't try, if we're not, if we're going to stop right here, we're not going to get really far. Wow. Exactly. Thank you so much, Keren. That was really enlightening and inspiring. And this is the exact reason and motivation behind the Jewish Women Entrepreneurs Podcast. Everything we spoke about today, and being a woman and being Jewish in Israel and being an entrepreneur, it's like really we covered all the topics that I know our listeners are coming to really get inspired by role models like you. And we always say, I mean, I hear a lot that we don't have enough role models in women, and that's what we also need to provide for our next generation.
We really do. We really do. We have incredible women out there that are just inspiring. We really do. We really do. And it's women like you, Natalie, that give a spotlight, which I think is fantastic. So thank you for that too.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Keren. Thank you, everyone. And we will see you next week with another episode of the Jewish Women Entrepreneurs Podcast. Thank you, Keren.
Bye. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.